Welcome back, everyone. We hope you all enjoyed our virtual volunteer recognition awards ceremony. Congratulations once again to this year's honorees. So now it's my privilege to welcome Provost Charles "Chip" Zukoski and 3 academic deans who recently joined USC. Provost Zukoski will moderate the discussion on how USC's academic leaders are rising to the challenge. As before, there will be a Q&A session following their discussions. So if you have any questions for Provost Zukoski or any of the deans, please begin submitting them in the Zoom Q&A section. Thanks. Chip Zukoski, our moderator for this program, was appointed Provost and Senior Vice President for Academic Affairs on October 1, 2019. He holds the Shelley and Ofer Nemirovsky's Provost Chair. As the university's second-ranking administrator, he oversees the Dornsife College of Letters, Arts and Sciences, the Keck School of Medicine, and 21 other professional schools and academic units. In addition to the USC museums, the divisions of student affairs, libraries, research, student religious life, and enrollment services. Prior to joining USC, Provost Zukoski served as the Provost and Executive Vice President for Academic Affairs at the University of Buffalo. So, welcome, Chip. I turn it over to you.
Thank you very much, John. I am really pleased to be here, and I want to welcome everybody who is participating in this event that we're having. I think that I really want to start by thanking you all for what you do for USC. Your commitment to making us an excellent institution is very important for us, and I want to thank you for your unwavering support, particularly during this particular time. You've heard the same almost cliches now as I have, that this is a challenging time. It's unusual, it's strange, that sort of things as we go through the global pandemic. But what I would like to emphasize is that I see this as an opportunity. The times that we're in give us a new opportunity to think about how we educate and how we're going to move forward with our students. We have to now accept that we'll never return to educating the students in the exact same way that we did before, that the society around us is changing, and how we prepare our students to be successful has to reflect those very dramatic changes. And that's where the opportunity comes in. We can use this opportunity to take a deep look at our educational model. We can reimagine how we enable students to learn. There are upsides and there are downsides to learning online, and we are exploring them. And there's no question that there are many tremendous opportunities that have been discovered as we've gone through this remarkable transition of shifting to all of our education being online. We're going to have to rethink and alter how we teach as we go forward, and what is necessary for the research that we do and the knowledge transfer that we need to undertake. These are just dramatically different times for us, and we have to experiment. It's a grand, audacious experiment that we're undertaking, but our goal is unchanged. Our goal is to create academic excellence that is innovative, exciting, interactive, and easily accessible to the students, independent of where they are, whether they're in a living room in Shanghai, a bedroom in Oakland, or the laptop in the village here in LA and on campus. So we are trying to create community as well. Not only are we sort of having classes and say Zoom lectures, but we're also attempting to generate how do you build community online? What are the interactive experiences that enable our students to form bonds and sort of mature from starting as, let's say, dependent undergraduates and mature into independent adults? How do we do that online? And tremendous effort has gone into it, and I think we'll hear more about that from our group of deans who have joined us here today. I'd like to start by just letting you know we have, through three of our newest deans with us here today, and they've joined USC at this really unusual time, right? That we're in the pandemic and we suddenly changed all the paradigms of how we're educating. They are tremendously well qualified to lead their schools and to take us forward, and I'm very excited about working with them. And today we have a chance to listen to them share their academic visions for the university and their respective schools. These three deans are Dean Geoffrey Garrett from the Marshall School of Business, Dean Sarah Gehlert, who is the Dean of the Suzanne Dworak-Peck School of Social Work, and Dean Pedro Noguera, who is the Dean of the Rossier School of Education. Each one of them is going to introduce themselves, and then we'll get into a dialogue between ourselves. Jeff, take it away.
So hi, Chip. Hi, everybody who's on the call. And please just let me underscore Chip's thanks to all of you for all you do. It's just incredible. Yes, I've been on the job now for 2 months and 11 days. Feels a lot longer than that, but that's what the chronology would say. I would typically introduce myself as saying that I'm one of the weirder business school deans out there in the world. The first time I had a full-time job in a business school was to become dean of a business school. I'm a political scientist by training. But of course, I have to admit that I'm a little less weird now because this Marshall is the 4th business school where I've had the honor to be dean. I love business schools. And the reason for that, I think for me above all, why I transitioned from being a more conventional social scientist is I love the fact that business schools have 2 feet firmly planted inside the university, but we're always looking outside. We're always looking to leverage two-way interactions with the business community and with society at large. I'm really passionate about the transformative power of American higher education. It's my life. I came to the US to do a PhD. It changed my life in ways I would never have anticipated. So my life's missions are the transformative power of higher ed and making sure that our institutions remain as global as possible. At the personal level, this is really a homecoming for me to California. My wife is a Californian. We raised our daughter here, and Southern California is about as close to Australia in all senses as you can get. When I was on the East Coast, there were a lot of people raised a lot of eyebrows to me about going west. And, I always think about cliches. And one cliche is Woody Allen in Annie Hall, where when he's in LA, the light is all glary and everything is stark and it looks really barren. The other version is the Randy Newman, I love LA. All I can say is I'm on the love LA side. Thanks, Chip.
Yeah, very good. Sarah. No, you're muted, Sarah.
I'm unmuting.
There we go. Here you go.
So next week will be my 5th month as Dean of the Suzanne Dworak School. So I have seniority over the others, over Jeff and Pedro by about a week, maybe a month. And I'm trained in biological anthropology and social work. And I joined the faculty of University of Chicago in 1991 and stayed there for 19 years and then moved to Washington University, where I was E. Desmond Lee Professor of Racial and Ethnic Diversity and Professor of Medicine in the medical school. And then I was for 3 years the Dean at the University of South Carolina. So I wanted to give you a very brief overview of our school. The Suzanne Dworak-Peck School of Social Work is the largest school of social work in the world. There's not a bigger one in Australia, Jeff. With 150 faculty members in social work and nursing. And it's also the oldest school of social work in the Western US. In 1920, the first full-time professional social work program was established in the Department of Sociology. And then in 1939, it became an independent school. So we've been around for about a century. And we currently have a research portfolio of about $44 million in the areas of substance abuse, child welfare, homelessness, school social work, mental health, anything in the social realm. Social workers provide 65% of mental health services in the United States. And so if you wanted to capture in one sentence what we do, I think it would be that we operate in the sweet spot between community credibility that's garnered through decades of deep community involvement and scholarship that's garnered through decades of participation in the intellectual community. So we take a deep dive into knowledge creation, and we often serve as translators between the university and communities. And we work with other units. The three of us were talking earlier about possibilities. One of my faculty members is co-directing the Center for Artificial Intelligence and Society with Viterbi. We work with other universities. We have the Children's Data Network, which spans universities across the country. And we have a military and veterans program. We provide workforce development for the LA County Department of Children and Family Services, and we do the count of homeless persons for the Greater LA Homeless Services Authority. So that's just to give you a quick and dirty overview of the often underlooked profession of social work.
Thank you. Pedro. No, muted.
Okay, there we go. Good afternoon, and great to be with all of you. I started also July 1st, and strange time to start a new job, but I'm enjoying it. It's amazing how you can get to know people virtually through Zoom, and I feel like I'm getting to know the faculty and staff at Rossier quite well. Prior to becoming dean at Rossier, I was a professor at UCLA. Before that, New York University for several years. Before that, Harvard. Before that, Berkeley. So I have had a chance to see many universities to understand how they work. And one of the questions that's always troubled me, particularly when it comes to great universities like University of Southern California, is how do we ensure that the university is an asset to the communities that it's located in? Because too often what we see is we have great universities in our major cities, but we are more concerned about maintaining boundaries and walls than we are about engaging the community. And so seeing that the President Folt in particular has this commitment to a private university with a public purpose was really attractive to me. And I've seen that is actually true, not just lip service. Right now, Rossier trains over 85% of the current superintendents in the state of California alone. We also have students around the world in our leadership programs. And what we're hoping to do is to build on that foundation to make an imprint in Los Angeles, because there's such a shortage of highly skilled teachers. And we're looking for ways to do that with the LA Unified Schools, working closely with Austin Butner, the superintendent, on how to build a partnership, because we believe that USC can play a role in addressing many of the challenges they face. As many of us know, the pandemic has exposed the deep inequities in our society, and schools in many ways reflect that more than other institutions. Those of you out there who are parents know how hard it is for parents who are working and trying to raise their children. The same is true for many teachers who are working and trying to teach our children. And so what we're trying to do is be a resource on how to do that well, how to make sure that education is meaningful and will engage young people. And so we're exploring different partnerships. This year, you'll hear more about an effort to reimagine learning, because we believe that the pandemic also offers an opportunity to disrupt some of the ways we've done things and to approach education differently. And so we look forward to engaging our alumni, because we know that you are an important part of our work. You're a constituency that we take very seriously, because we know that many of you support our current students, but also give us information about the needs of our communities, our state, and the country. And so you'll be hearing more about these efforts in the next few years. But I want to encourage you, those out there who read the New York Times, there's an article that I'm featured in today, along with the former Secretary of Education, John King, about how the pandemic is exacerbating inequity and what we can do about it. So we're trying to make a difference and have an impact well beyond USC.
Great. Okay, thank you very much. So here we go. We're now going to move into our just sort of dialogue and a conversation. And so what I'd like to do is maybe kick us off by asking you to talk about what you imagine as the most important issues that you're facing right now in your schools and what you're looking at. Why don't I start with Sarah?
Okay. So the School of Social Work had kind of lost its way. In 1998, it was ranked number 6 among schools of social work in the country. But after a recent history of some bad choices and 2 interim deans who pretty much had their hands full keeping the school operating, it really is time for us to reevaluate our assets and set a course for the future. So that's what I'm doing right away. And in some ways, I think I agree with Chip and Jeff and Pedro that this is not a bad time to do it. Everything's thrown in the air, and maybe as it falls down, we can reconfigure it before it hits the ground. So we're in the process of redefining our mission and identifying ourselves to the world. The school really is poised to enter a new period in looking at its core mission, and I really want to lead us into an era of more academic excellence and fiscal responsibility. So we're looking for efficiencies, viewing the school with new eyes. I think it's easier when you come in from the outside. I plan to spend the first year evaluating the structure and functioning of the school, working with community groups, looking at the school through the eyes of alumni, students, community members, staff and faculty, and our very accomplished Board of Counselors. I've begun with individual meetings with the Board of Counselors and with student groups, and they're helping sort of define us, and then we'll take it out to the world. So I know from viewing school from the other coast in the Midwest for many years, it's really not well understood. So I'm amassing faculty accomplishments to use my position. I'm president of the National Academy to tell our story. I'm using that opportunity. And I'm convinced that that will raise our rankings and bring us a new stream of gifted students. So I'm optimistic, but the first months are going to be sort of workhorse months.
Yeah, great. Okay. Pedro, what are you imagining as your first sort of task?
So fortunately for me, Karen Sims Gallagher left Rossier in good shape financially, and we have strong enrollment, strong programs, we're attracting students, and we're ahead of the curve on online learning because we started offering many of our classes online over 10 years ago. And so that's allowed us to have students from all around the world enrolled in our program. What I hope to do now is first and foremost to get to know my faculty. And I've been holding one-on-one meetings because if I don't know who's there, it's hard to know how we can work together, what's possible. So just give you one example, yesterday I met with one of our professors who is associated with the research center, Chariot, which is a partnership with Viterbi. He was one of the founders of the internet, Professor Rao, and he was very interested in how we use technology to enhance learning. And so this is one of our goals is particularly now is how do we not simply return to normal, but to make schools, make learning more meaningful for kids. So we're looking at ways to build upon the foundation that Dean Gallagher established at Rossier so that we can become a leader in innovation. Rossier is already one of the leading research institutions among schools of education in the country. We want to now expand, build upon that to broaden our reach in other areas. So for example, in the training of teachers and principals, but also in applying research to address the problems facing schools and universities across the country. So one of the ways we're going to do that is in a partnership with Los Angeles Public Schools, and we're looking at ways to incentivize bringing some strong teachers into LA, looking at ways to bring housing to those teachers, because we know that very often teaching doesn't even allow you enough of a salary to support yourself adequately. But we think that if we want to build the talent pool in LA, then USC's got to be in partnership with LA Unified. And fortunately, I have a faculty and a staff that's very committed to that mission. And so you'll be hearing more about that in the next few months.
Great. Okay, Jeff, what are the most important issues you're facing right now?
Chip, I think about our jobs right now analytically as having to be an optimum balance between being reactive to the crisis, and then, as you said in your opening remarks, being proactive about new opportunities. So on the reactive side, I mean, I've certainly spent the 2 months and 11 days of my deanship thinking every day about how best to execute this unprecedented remote semester. And it won't be any surprise to anyone, I think, on this call that we're already thinking about the spring semester. And as Chip said, let's hope it's a return to something that's more normal, but it won't be normal as we knew it at the end of 2019. So that's on the reactive side. But I agree with you, Chip, that the crisis is creating opportunities. And I think about the opportunities in two ways. The first one is that it's the underlying theme of the crisis is that it's accelerating trends that were already there. But I think it's also opening up opportunities for us because we can just think the unthinkable now, things that if somebody had said we were going to put all these classes online and do it in a week's time, people would have said, come on, you're nuts, that can't happen. Well, it did happen, and it worked remarkably well. So the combination of accelerating trends and more degrees of freedom, I think, does create a fantastic environment to think about a better future. Online is an obvious example of this combination. USC was a leader in online education from early on with lots of online degrees. We have great ones at the Marshall School too. But instead of thinking about these two pathways of online on campus, I think going forward, we're going to think much more about a continuum where technology is going to infuse and enable everything that we do. But I think the challenge, certainly the challenge and opportunity I see at Marshall, is for us to do what's best done online and to scale that so that we can then reinvest in all the magic that happens on campus. And I think the magic that happens on campus is typically all about application, teamwork, learning by doing, experiential learning, all of that kind of stuff. So maybe if we can turn a crusty old lecture into something that can now happen online that students can view at 3 a.m. from their beds if they wish to at 1.2 speed or 0.8 speed. And then we create a surplus of sort that we can reinvest in really enriching the on-campus experience. I think that's a win-win. And you know, how precisely to do that, there are lots of pathways, but I think the opportunities are just really exciting.
So one of the questions comes up, we keep talking about these opportunities and going online. I'm interested in your opinions about how are our students doing? What is have the nature of our students changed, and how do you see sort of these online experiences altering our interactions with students or their preparation or how they're prepared coming to us and that sort of things? So I guess, Pedro, start with you.
So I've been concerned about our students. One of the things I know is that the mental health challenges facing many students across the country have grown. And many students are engaging and learning, but they're doing it under circumstances that are not ideal. You know, I have faculty telling me students who are literally in a closet while they're doing their Zoom lessons. So I don't want to understate at all the challenges facing many of our students. At the same time, they're showing up and they are continuing to be engaged and continuing on their path to pursue their education, which I think is encouraging. It's a sign of great resilience. What we want to do is to make sure that we're able to continue to offer excellent support services as well as challenging programs that meet their needs so they are prepared for this uncertain time that we're in. But I would say right now, as I get, one of the greatest problems I've experienced with the pandemic is that I don't get to directly interact with students. I'm hoping that in the near future, that'll be possible.
Sarah, how are you seeing the sort of the preparation of the students changing during this time, or how we're educating them? How are they reacting to the new environment? You're on mute.
I spent most weekends the last 5 months talking to students because I like to answer them as soon as I get to me. And we've got some very gifted students we've got a group called Students with Voices that have ideas for how we can improve the curriculum. And we've also, like education, had online for 10 years. We were one of the first, and we still have a lot of students online. And what this has done is cause us to look at that. And really, I think we may have become a little complacent. When you're training social workers, you're training them to work with families and communities and individuals who often have a lot of problems and don't have much power. So we really need to build in the interactive. So we're now trying to expand to more virtual reality so we can sort of change the situation and have students practice in ways they might have done in the classroom, but probably weren't getting enough from the virtual program. And we're doing modules instead of the traditional, 50-minute hour. So we're trying to make some really positive changes there. And also the big challenge for us has been field practicum, because our students do about 3,000 hours a year in agencies. And that's been a little bit difficult, but we've tried to make that happen, balancing their safety with making sure they have this opportunity. We work with people who are too infrequently included in discourse, and we really want to find ways to include them in efforts to answer the questions that inform a lot of policy. I think we missed the boat on many policies that we're realizing recently, but trying to really make sure that we engage even more closely in ways that Pedro talked about with community organizations. For example, as I told you, we co-lead the Center for Artificial Intelligence in Society. And we've been thinking of ways that we can use artificial intelligence to include community members that are disenfranchised, to bring them into the mainstream if that's where they want to be. And so it's raising a lot of really valuable questions, I think.
Great. Jeff, are students' attitudes towards getting business training or what they want to do with their business education altering? Do you see shifts?
Again, Chip, I think the shifts were already there in terms of the way business school students are thinking about their careers. My sense is that young people today, and when you're as old as I am, most people look young. Young people today are just different. They are much more mission-driven. They're much more purpose-oriented. They're more skeptical about big organizations, and they're hungry and they're in a hurry. They want to do it now. So I think the kind of entrepreneurial spirit that USC has and the innovation that's built into USC actually is a perfect fit for where young people are today in terms of what they want. But I just wanted to give a shout out to our students. Pedro was right, I think, to highlight the mental health concerns that we have, the wellness concerns we have. I'm just struck by how much our students are being partners in the challenges we're facing right now. So this morning, I had a Hollywood Squares 9 Zoom chat with some undergraduates who are mentors for incoming freshmen in a program called GLP, Global Leadership Program. The commitment of those students is just incredible, and the value that they're adding, the help that they're giving incoming freshmen is enormous. Yesterday, I was on the phone with a similar group of leaders for our part-time MBA program. These are people in their 30s who have full-time careers and families that they're all juggling. And these were student leaders who were just exercising compassion to improve the experience for their fellow students. Now, business school students love clubs. They like being able to put things on their resume, but I don't think our students are doing this for resume building reasons. I think they're doing it because they have genuine compassion for their fellow students. And that's just an incredible thing. And I'm so pleased and proud to be part of that.
Given those changes, do you see ways that we have to change the educational model? Each of you has described sort of experiences of the students, but does that mean the way we prepare our students to be successful has to change in the courses that we're teaching?
Can I jump? passionate about this one, Chip. Can I just jump in with two themes? The first theme for me is that USC has an extraordinary opportunity, maybe unprecedented in American universities, to integrate wonderful professional schools into the education that everybody at USC receives. So, we think a lot about future of liberal arts and do we try to put a wall up around liberal arts? I don't think that's the way to go forward. I think the way to go forward is to combine the best of a 20th century undergraduate education and turn it into a 21st century one where I think skills and professionalism will just become more important. Second theme for me is lifelong learning, right? So it's not as if it's set and forget with degrees. Degrees are foundational, but all of us we're all going to be lifelong learners. And I think this is an incredible opportunity for a university like USC. Not when we think about the Trojan family, we think about it as an asset, and it is an enormous asset, but it's one that we can add value to by being there for our graduates, our friends, for the rest of their lives. So education's changing, but it strikes me that USC is really a perfectly placed institution to be in the vanguard of change on all dimensions.
Can I add one thing, Chip, that I didn't mention before? I think I'm not on mute. We do have a lot of students that have need. And currently, our incoming class, 65% were underrepresented minority, which doesn't necessarily mean that they have need, but some of our students in general are coming out of foster care. They have been homeless or they are homeless. So we've been trying to do with other units wraparound services to try to work with student health to arguably students that have been in foster care don't really lend themselves to a traditional mental health session in student health. So I think it's easy to forget those students, but they've got so much excitement and they have so much to give that I don't want to forget that.
Yeah. Pedro, I'm interested, you play this interesting role in that you are trying to attract students who are going to be the teachers. And so the preparation of the students that you're training is and how you are dealing with that is interesting. But then I'm also interested in how you think about the way you change the way you're educating your teachers to deal with the population of students that they're working with, students who are already under greater stress when they're in grade school and that sort of things. And I'm wondering if your curriculum has to be changing in order to sort of meet the students, the K through 12 students where they are.
Yes, I'm thinking about it in two ways. One is we have to change the way kids learn, the way kids are engaged. Because I would say too often we expect kids to learn the way they're taught rather than adapting the learning, the teaching model to the way kids actually learn. And so one of the reasons why we're going to be engaging people in the high tech and media sectors is because so much of the learning that's occurring right now that kids do on their own happens there as opposed to school. But beyond that, we're also very concerned about what role education plays in supporting democracy in this country. And I think that we're really in a crisis in this country at this moment because there's so many Americans who don't really have a foundation in our history, don't understand the Constitution, have trouble distinguishing between real news and fake news. We're going to be working with Cindy McCain, the widow of John McCain, the senator, who's on our board of counselors, on a civics initiative that'll go K-12. Because we think that in order for kids to be prepared as voters and participants in democracy, they need to have an experience in a democratic practice and process, even while they're in school. And so we're going to work on how to develop that content and those learning experiences so that kids come away better prepared as citizens.
Fabulous, fabulous. So now I'm going to just sort of shift it up a little bit. What each of you is new. What attracted you to USC, other than that I was attracting you? You know, what were the other features of USC that caught your attention, that brought you here? Now, Pedro.
So I would follow up on what Jeff said earlier. I do think USC's been a leader in innovation. And that's easy to, it's easy to lose sight of what that means. And for me, what that means is in being able to create new programs, new courses that are responsive to the needs of a changing society. Education, I think, runs the risk of being outdated, of stale, when we are not in tune with the changes that are occurring around us. And so, as we've seen with just our ability to adapt to online learning, we've got to make other adaptations. And I believe that a university like USC is better prepared to do that than others because, frankly, we have more autonomy, more flexibility, and that was very attractive to me, the opportunity to do something that I think will really be impactful.
Chip, you're on mute.
So besides the West Coast and the beauty of LA, what was it that attracted you to USC?
Well, again, let me go analytical, Chip, for a second on LA. I think LA is as I said, I love LA, but I think about LA as being close to unique on at least 3 dimensions. It's probably the biggest and grandest experiment in multicultural diversity of anywhere on the planet. It's also the creative capital of the world, and it's the gateway to the Asia Pacific. So I think being a university in the center of LA is just an incredible opportunity. I was living in Philadelphia, and there's the Statue of Liberty and all of that stuff, but it doesn't feel quite as dynamic as Los Angeles to me. I think the dynamism of LA is reflected in USC as well. And the sense I get from everybody associated with the university is everyone's so proud of how far the university has come in the last couple of decades, and it's truly remarkable. But I just get this palpable sense of people's hunger to go further, and again, to go further being really entrepreneurial and really innovative. I think about the Marshall School. I love the idea of a business school that's central to the university, and it feels to me that Marshall is very central to USC. And I think about that in 2 ways. One is, a lot of the big brand business schools that people know are pure play graduate institutions. The fact that Marshall has 4,000 undergraduates, about 20% of the total undergraduate population, I think is an incredible asset. I also believe that business schools are in the business of turning ideas into outcomes. And that means that we just need the rest of the university because the ideas can come from anywhere. What you do in business schools is have the discipline to turn a good idea into a great outcome. So the fact that the geography, the intellectual and the physical geography of USC is almost unique, it just strikes me as a compelling asset and a very compelling magnet to me to become part of the university and to try to pitch in with everybody else in this grand trajectory that the university has been on.
Carolina to USC.
Oh, I only heard the last part of that, but I was excited about the opportunity to make a great school better and let other people know how good it is. So really packaging it and presenting it back to the world, I could only end up looking good. And coming up with a shared vision, that's incredibly exciting to me, with multiple stakeholders and creating greater community. And that fits with my background, sort of bridging social science and medicine and leading a lot of transdisciplinary efforts at other universities. My approach has always been collaborative, and that's so welcomed here. Not only do I like to be collaborative because it minimizes discord, but because it allows an organization to bring forth ideas and ways of knowing that might have been missed if you'd taken another approach. So I just feel like it's a place where you can make things happen.
Fabulous. I'm interested now in how the 3 of you as deans would like to work with our volunteer leaders, our ambassadors, the stakeholders that might be represented in the audience here. What are ways that our volunteers can help your respective schools? Sarah, why don't you start?
Okay. I think I'm really excited about the alumni with whom we've worked, but if you could continue to be engaged and interested, and for me, giving feedback. I don't think that I know everything. So I have been really trying to get a lot of feedback on the school and asking specific questions. That would help a great deal. And it would help to get these ideas from people who aren't all in the social science. So also, please help us get others involved. That would be really exciting, bringing in people who haven't been involved. So that's my short answer.
Pedro.
So, we want Rossier to be seen as a resource that people go to when they see problems in education. We know there are lots of problems. We think that our research that we do can be helpful, but we need to hear from alumni about the particular problems facing communities, for example, rural areas where kids are more isolated, often don't have access to the internet, where there are often fewer resources available. We want to play a role in supporting schools and educators throughout the country. And so hearing from our alumni about how we can do that and how to make research accessible to practitioners, I think would be particularly useful for us as we think about fulfilling our mission.
Very good. Jeff.
Vartan Gregorian, the head of the Carnegie Corporation, somebody I had opportunity to work with 10 years ago or so, said something to me once about volunteer leadership that really struck, which is he said, it's the 3 W's, wealth, wisdom, and work. And of course, we want to become less tuition dependent, so we need to reduce the amount of cost of education that we pass on to our students. So philanthropy is incredibly important. But I think these 2 other words, wisdom and work, are so important. Wisdom, along with what Sarah said, I just think about strategic advice. We have incredible alums who have rich experiences, diverse histories, different expertise. I need to learn from them. Marshall will become a much more collectively intelligent place the greater the diversity of opinions that we listen to and synthesize. And then work. We often talk about alumni as ambassadors, and I think it's a really good metaphor. If you just think about us in the course of your daily lives, think about connections you can make for us. Think about people you can engage us with to expand the network. Think about opportunities for our students or students that you think we should be recruiting. It's a cliche of business schools that alumni are the greatest resource. It happens to be true, and I think it's nowhere truer than at USC. I was a bit skeptical, maybe all of us as new deans were, of this notion of Trojan family. Can it really be so different from other universities? I can answer that question in the affirmative now. It really is different, and that's an incredible asset.
So that is my impression as well. I thought it was a marketing slogan, the Trojan family, when I first arrived. And boy, was I wrong, that our alumni and the friends of USC are a tremendous asset for exactly what you're saying, Jeff, that it's the wealth, the wisdom, and the work that actually helps drive us forward. And again, I just want to thank the 3 of you for this. We're about to go into question and answer period, but I would like to also thank all of the alumni who are gathered here participating in today, that we are dependent on you for your wisdom and the work that you do and the ambassadorship that you use to carry forward the message of what USC is. This Trojan family is indeed a remarkable thing, and I am certainly proud to now be part of it and to carry forward the traditions that we've developed. That's why I put on my USC cap today, is to indicate that I'm becoming a true member of the Trojan family. So with that, why don't we pause here and open it up for general questions and answers from the rest of the audience.
Thank you very much, Provost Zukoski, Deans Garrett, Gehlert, and Noguera for that stimulating discussion. And not only do our alumni have time, talent, and treasure, or wisdom, work, and wealth to bring, they also bring some great questions and ideas, and we're going to start that right now. The
Okay.
first question is going to come to us from Frank Rietzach. He's an Australian, so this question is for Geoff Garrett, and it's, what thoughts do you have, Dean Garrett, to continue to position USC and Marshall more actively in the Asia-Pacific region, given the influential alumni that are located there, actively operating, and the international students we host each year, and increasing the importance of Asia-Pacific on the global stage?
A big question that is very close to my heart for all the obvious reasons. I am worried, I'm genuinely worried that we're entering a deglobalizing phase of human history. The 2020s look pretty challenging to me from the perspective of globalism. But I'm inspired by an old Winston Churchill quote. I think Churchill said in World War II, if you want to fly a kite, it's better to fly it into the wind than with the wind. And I certainly think about global higher education as a kite we need to fly more than ever in the 2020s. With respect to USC's position, USC has incredible assets in Asia Pacific. I think Steve Sample, when he was president, did an extraordinary job of embracing Asia, embracing global education early. And that's just an incredible asset for us to leverage now. But if I go one level deeper just for a second, I think we're going to be living in a period not only of deglobalization, but where the US-China relationship is just going to be much, much tenser going forward, irrespective of what happens in the 2020 presidential election. And that's going to create challenges, but also opportunities for everybody, including USC. I think Asia in the next 10 years is going to be a different continent than the one we got used to in the last 20 years, which was really built around US-China engagement, and everything else just hung off that in an important sense. Now there are new opportunities. There are opportunities in India, in Indonesia, throughout Southeast Asia, other parts of East Asia that I think we need to look very seriously at. Of course, I'd love Australia to be there. I just can't be too biased and say that we need to make Sydney the capital of the world, even though it is my favorite city in the world. I can't go that far, but I do think the Asia Pacific opportunities are incredible. And yes, I think we need to do everything we can to defend the importance of having a global student body, but equally we need to take the university and our students and our faculty to the world. So two-way engagement is something I think about all the time. I think it's true for business schools with the business community. I think it's true for USC with Asia. Let's have lots more two-way engagement without being naive. There are going to be some challenges out there, but I think it's more important than ever that USC continues to be a global leader in global higher education.
Excellent. Well, you know, as of this summer, we have 437,712 alumni around the world. About 20,000 of those alumni live in Asia. Only about 150 are down under in Australia, but we're hoping to get that number up and justify some Trojan family excursions down there. In the meantime, I'd now like to focus on a great interdisciplinary question that comes to both Dean Gehlert and Dean Noguera, and that is from Suzanne Roberts. She makes a comment that she'd love to see some interdisciplinary collaboration between the Dworak-Peck School and the Rossier School with LAUSD to reimagine education with a trauma-informed lens of socio-emotional learning in the pre and K-12 environment. So can you both comment on that request or on that notion? Sarah, please.
Thank you. I think that's an important question. You know, I was in South Carolina before LA and heard from a lot of teachers that they were facing so many, that families and children are facing so many problems. How do you teach a child when they come to school without shoes? And I think that we're trying to find new ways to work together. Pedro and I've talked about this to help better equip teachers, and also in terms of lifelong learning. How can we work with teachers in practice that are increasingly seeing these issues? And so I think there are a lot of possibilities. Trauma-informed care is something we do. We have been helping the LA Department of Children and Family Services train their caseworkers a little bit more in trauma-informed care. So, and the opportunity of working with Pedro and Rossier is exciting.
Thank you. And let me build on Sarah's comment. So many of the challenges facing our schools have nothing to do with education. They have to do with poverty. They have to do with violence. They have to do with the fact that many kids don't have basic needs met. And those compound the challenges facing our schools. So in effect, our teachers are expected to be social workers and psychologists and surrogate parents, and they're not trained for that. That results in burnout and results in many kids not getting basic needs met. So I see certainly the School of Social Work as a partner, but I also see the School of Medicine as a partner in this work, and several of the other schools working together, especially here in LA where the needs are so great. We have an existing partnership with several schools surrounding USC, and where we're bringing counselors, people who are trained to be counselors. And what we're seeing is just with that input, we can significantly increase the number of students who apply to college because they get one-on-one support through the process. So I think that when the university as a whole becomes engaged, that we can have a big impact, and it does require an interdisciplinary approach.
Thank you both. And Pedro, a quick follow-up question, and it comes from Ann Palmer of our Town and Gown group here. And she wants to know, in looking at expanding the pool of teachers for LAUSD, does Rossier have plans to add back the teaching credential program?
Yes, we do. In fact, we'd like it to be a residency-based program, because what the research shows is that when you train teachers in schools, more like the way we train physicians, right? You don't train a physician in a classroom, you train them in a hospital under the supervision of a skilled physician. We should be doing that with teachers, because for too long, the gap between what they learned in the classroom and what they experienced in school was too wide. We want to reduce that gap, and we want to build with schools here in LA, lab schools, where not only is there the training of teachers high quality, but we're also bringing the research in to support teachers in the work, so we can model how do you, for example, teach kids who arrived in this country as teenagers to read and write in 2 languages, because they already speak one, but they may not be literate in their native language. We have research on how to do that, but a lot of times that research is not made available to schools. So building the partnerships that are there will allow us to not only strengthen the quality of our teacher ed programs, but also to help the schools solve some of the many problems they face.
Excellent, thank you. Our next question comes to Sarah Gehlert, and it's from Wandi Jung, who's actually from the School of Pharmacy. So I love the interdisciplinary spirit of our alumni here. Can you tell us your vision, Dean Gehlert, for the masters in the School of Nursing, nurse practitioners, for our frontline workers? What your vision is for that whole program?
I was not fully equipped to be the dean of a school of nursing, but I'm learning. And I think that it's part of our of reaching out and trying to get input on what our masters of science in nursing can be. And we would like it to grow, but just because I am new to nursing, I'm trying to learn the direction that nursing's taking so that we can be in the best possible position. It's exciting, just like Pedro talked about, sort of cross-training in social determinants and teaching. Many of our nurses are interested in sort of the social factors that impede health. So we've been expanding the courses that we share across social work and education. Social work and nursing and education.
Excellent, thank you. The next question is for Geoff Garrett, and this question comes from Ian Zarzullo in Austin, Texas. With the increasing mainstream acceptance of incorporating sustainability into corporate strategy and investing, and I think also, of course, since that's a huge priority for Dr. Folt, how do you see Marshall playing a leadership role in preparing the sustainability business leaders of tomorrow and connecting alumni with jobs?
Yeah, fantastic question. We have long thought of corporations as part of the problem, not part of the solution when it comes to sustainability and climate change. I think that's slowly reversing, and it's going to have to reverse. I don't think the solutions to climate change can only come through big government deals. I do think the regulatory framework, getting the regulatory framework right, is really important. But my bottom line is that private sector innovation, I think, is going to be a really big part of the solution. One example of that for me is electric vehicles. We set up a regulatory framework in which there are some incentives for us all to buy electric vehicles with price discounts. But most of the action there, certainly for me as a consumer, is how good's the battery power in my electric vehicle? That's going to depend on a technological innovation, or maybe it's hydrogen fuel cells. I don't know down the road. So at the societal level, I think business is going to go from part of the problem to part of the solution. That must happen. And I think that then just naturally translates to what business schools should do. And here, I think we just leverage where our students are. I've already mentioned this, that I think our students today are just so much more mission-driven, purpose-oriented. They care about so much more than a paycheck. The traditional, maybe dismissive cliches about business school students, they only want to get a good job. I think our students want to get a good job, yes, but they want to get a good job where they can believe in the mission of the organization and where they believe that the organization is making the world a better place. So, we talk a lot about stakeholder capitalism these days. My sense is that students at Marshall are way ahead of the curve there, and they really get that. And so I think Marshall can, should, and will be an important part of President Folt's sustainability initiative. Our student entrepreneurs, who are just fantastic, most of the startups that our students are engaged in are squarely focused on solving social problems, and sustainability is always one of those.
Okay, well, believe it or not, time flies when we're having fun. We do have time for one more question, and this one's kind of a whopper, and it's actually going to go to Chip. It's going to go to Provost Zukoski, but I think all the deans might want to weigh in. With the Cal State Systems announcement this week that they're going to keep their 23 campuses in remote learning mode, even for terms beginning in January 2021, and as both an alum and father of a current USC Keck Marshall senior, meaning this is from George Sheth, our alum, want to know, do you know by approximately when you'll make a decision about spring 2021 at USC, knowing all the implications with the state, the county, the city, et cetera? Just wondering. He thought, and George Sheth is saying, I thought it was quite early for the Cal State system to announce such a decision, but they're also very different from USC in many ways. So thank you for all you're doing, and can you please speak to that question? And if any of our deans want to offer any comments on that as well, that would be great. But Chip, why don't we start with you?
So that is the question that we're beginning to have to work through right now. We have to load the course catalog so students will know what they're going to take. And because the semester is shortened, we have to begin to think about the modes of the modes of teaching that we'll be doing in the spring. So that's a current conversation. Decisions have not been made. Quite honestly, we're facing, like everyone else, simply the uncertainty of the COVID transmission environment that's around us. The LA County has said that they'll allow no in-person instruction through at least Thanksgiving. And so, but there's a long time between the end of that, a full month after Thanksgiving through the beginning of the next semester. We're expecting to have to hit a go, no-go date sometime in mid to late October is when we think that we'll have to make the decision simply to allow students and faculty to plan what they'll be doing in the spring. We remain optimistic that the environment will change enormously. And I too was surprised that the Cal State system chose to make their decision what seems early to us, but that's because we're optimistic and hope that people will continue to physically distance, wear masks, and use good hygiene so that the COVID will damp down and begin to go away. It remains a challenge for us. The mode that we would be in at the moment that we're planning for is similar to what we were planning for the fall, which is that we would start with the planning for some in-person and then hybrid and then online classes. So we're not yet at a point where we think that we could be fully back to where we were at the beginning, say, of the spring semester last year. We still believe we'll have to have physical distancing in the dorms at probably lower density than they currently are, but so much could change. I mean, it's many months away, but that's where we currently are. Mid to late October is sort of what we're looking at for when we're going to have to make that decision. Anyone else? Colleagues?
I would just add, we are a major university.
I hope you can. Not if you could hear me, or to our deans. Excellent, they could hear me. So, okay, so go ahead, Pedro. Thank you. Sorry, we're having a little, my battery died, but go ahead, please.
Sorry. I was saying that if a university can't guide its actions by science, then we're really in trouble, right? That is that we need to use the science to make wise decisions about how to do this and learn from the mistakes of others. And we've already seen other universities that did this and then had to retreat. I trust the provost and the president to make a sound decision. But my hope is that I'll get to see my colleagues and my students soon, in person.
Excellent. Do either Sarah or Jeff want to comment on that? No comment from Sarah. Jeff, any comments from you? I mean, I know we're all hoping to get back on campus, but any final comment from you?
Yeah, we are. Of course, everyone is so desperate for real human interaction. I miss it. I miss it every hour of every day myself. Thinking conceptually about the challenges that university leaders are facing right now, this is, God, it's a really tough job Carol and Chip have right now. And I can see the cross pressures. On the one hand, everyone wants certainty and wants a decision. So that pushes us towards making a decision sooner rather than later. But on the other hand, you want to rely on the best possible evidence, and the evidence is changing all the time, and that pushes you to delay later. And so getting that Archimedean point is just really difficult, and it's where leadership matters. And I think the university's leadership is in great hands. So we should all be confident about the way the decision will be made. I think it'll have the balance of the right considerations. I have no doubt about that.
Well, I'm proud of the way we've done it. We've been amazingly nimble, and it's gone amazingly well. So that speaks to the Trojan family.
Absolutely. And speaking of the Trojan family, as anxious as all of our faculty and administrators and students are to be back on campus, our alumni are chomping at the bit. I mean, we're so honored to have several hundred alumni with us right now, alumni leaders from around the world to join us for this. And we're honored that all of you have taken time out of a very busy schedule, out of a very unusual time in all of our lives to spend time with our alumni leadership. So thank you again to Provost Zukoski, Dean Garrett, Dean Gehlert, Dean Noguera. All you guys just had joined the Trojan family in the last few months, and we couldn't have been more pleased that all of you took the time to join us today. So we thank you, and we wish you a safe weekend. And as we continue to work through this pandemic, we hope that we get to meet you on campus very soon.